Okay, we're going to create the door, and our step one is to start a new door using the door RFT file. If we go to the exterior side, this is what the door looks like. If we take a look at the 3D view, this is what the door looks like right now, and there's no panel in there or anything like that. That's the cut opening, and there's the trim. We are going to create a door panel first. So I'm going to go to the exterior side, and I'm going to hit extrusion, rectangle, and put a rectangle around the inside edge of the opening cut. Make sure I lock those. And then I'm going to do a second profile to create an opening in the center of that extrusion that will be where the glazing goes. For that, I'm not going to lock anything. I'm going to add some parameters. So I'm going to annotate, and I want to create angled parameters. I'm going to go from the reference line to the inside line. Reference line, inside line. These are going to be my styles parameters. So I'm going to select one of them and add a parameter. And this will be an instance parameter that I call styles. It's going to be set to common, length, and dimensions. I also want this to be the styles parameter, so I'm going to switch that to the styles parameter. It's going to set both of them to the same size. In the parameters dialog box, I can set the default to 4.5 inches. Right, so that's going to show up as an instance that I can change. I want a top rail and bottom rail, so I'm going to do the same thing. Annotate from this reference line to the inside line, from this reference line to the inside line of the bottom rail. This is going to become a new parameter called instance top rail. This is going to become a new parameter called, make sure that's an instance bottom rail. And we can go up here and we can set those defaults. So I want the bottom rail default to be 1 foot 6 inches. I want the top rail default to be the same as the styles, 4.5 inches. Okay, once I've got those locked down, in fact I don't have them locked yet, I'm going to lock them. I can go ahead and hit the green checkbox, and we have the door panel. So let's take a look at it. It's just too thick. Okay, so there's the door, there's the extrusion is set to a depth of 1.5. I'm going to change that to 1.5 inches instead, which is a typical door width. And then we want to see how that door became associated with the opening. I want to know which plane it attached itself to. So I'm going to go to the top view, reference plane, and I can see that it attached to the center. If I hit the tab key and highlight that, it's the center front back work plane. I want this attached to the interior work plane because an interior, a residential door opens to the inside. If this was a commercial door, then I'd want it to be attached to the exterior so that the commercial door can open to the outside. So I want to select that object and I want to edit its work plane. And I want to change the work plane to interior instead of exterior. When I do that, it's going to move the door outside of the boundary it should be in. So see how it's moved it so the inside edge of the door is aligned with the exterior instead of the outside edge of the door. So I want to change this and have it go this way instead. And then I can see that I need to change the extrusion end to negative 1.5 inches. So once I have that set, then it's in the correct position. So now I can continue forward. So let's go back to the 3D view, and we have our door, and we're going to put some glazing in there, and we're going to add the swing and so on. So let's go ahead and add the swing next. Now, in all the doors that you have working, not all the doors work the same in Revit, but the door that I'm going to do for this scenario is just going to be, the swing is going to be represented with symbolic lines. So I go to the reference level, and the first thing I need to do is make sure that this object doesn't show up in plan when we look at it, that this only shows up when we see it in a 3D view, or if we see it from the exterior or interior sides. So it's a three-dimensional object that we see in those views. I don't want to see it when I look down on it because I'm going to create a door swing that's going to represent that object instead. So I've got to select the object and I've got to control its visibility settings. If we go up to visibility settings, right now this object is set to show up in every scenario and every detail level. I do want this to show up in every detail level, but I don't want it to show up in a plan scenario, and I don't want it to show up when cut in a plan or our reflected ceiling plan. Okay, so when I hit OK here, then you're going to see that that object grayed out. So it was black lines before, now it's gray lines. So that means it's not going to appear in plan when I go into a plan view in the regular Revit file. Now I want to create symbolic lines that represent that swing. So I'm going to go to create, annotate, and I want to create a symbolic line. And I'll create a rectangle first of all that's right here at the corner of where the hinge would be, and I want that to be set to the depth of the door. We're going to set it to the same as the door width parameter, and I want the width to be the 1.5 inches. So I will add dimensions, and I want to set that width to 1.5 inches, and I do want to lock that. So find the lock. The depth in this direction I'm going to have to set to a parameter, so I want to make sure that I'm grabbing, actually let's go from here to here, that's a better way to do it, and I want to change that to the width parameter. So whatever I set the width to will control the length of that, and then I do want to make sure that this here is attached to that reference line. So a better way to do that, because you notice it attached to the wall instead of the reference line, so I want to use the Align tool, and I want to tab until I see the reference line. That's the interior reference, and I want to tab until I see the edge of that rectangle and lock it. Next we'll create the swing, so I go back to our annotate, symbolic lines, and we'll create a swing using the start end radius. So I want to go from here, from here to here, and then it's going to set the radius for me. And I don't have to do anything with that. I think it's going to automatically lock itself to this edge and stay with it because we've locked it to that point. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's do a save as what we got so far. Before we do that, let's look at the 3D view. The 3D view, notice that the symbolic lines do not show. We go to our reference plan view, the symbolic lines will show. When we go to our exterior view, we're not going to see those lines down there, although I don't think we would anyway, and interior view. So this is the way that this will function. When we see this in a plan, we're going to see that door swing. We won't see the door on the inside. So at this point, I think we're ready to save this as kind of a base door system that we've got drawn. So I'm going to do a File, Save As, Family, and I'm going to put this in my S drive under 220 Families Doors, and I'll call this Exterior Door with Glazing. Okay? And I'll call it 1 for now. So I might make a couple of iterations of this. Alright, so let's keep going. We'll go ahead and add the glazing to this. So I'm going to go back to that. Let's do the interior side instead, and I'll add the glazing element. So I'll hit Create Extrusion and use the rectangle. And I want to lock that to those lines. Remember, I have those lines locked to instances, so if I have the glazing locked to those lines, if those instances change, then this glazing is going to change along with it. The thickness of the glazing I want to set to 0.5 inches. That's thicker than the glazing might actually be, but that is thick enough to work with. And if we look at the reference view, I want to see where that glazing landed. You can see that it landed on the center. We want to do the same thing with that and change the work plane so that it's at the interior work plane. So I want to edit work plane, change it to interior, hit OK, and then we'll move that glazing back. And I'm going to do just a little bit of math because I want that glazing to be on the inside. So I'm looking at this to see what I have to set to negative values. And you see that I'm somewhere around negative 1 and somewhere around, negative 1 point, that would be, it should be negative 1.5, okay? So this this one over this extrusion start should be negative 0.5 inches, and extrusion end should be negative 1 inch, and I think that's going to be perfect. So I just want the glazing to be somewhere in the center, and that works out where we have a 1/2 inch on this side, a 1/2 inch, and then another 1/2 inch adds up to 1.5 inches for the total door thickness, and we've got the glazing right in the center. So that's where the glazing is. The glazing also needs to be set, visibility settings, so that we turn them off in plan and turn it off in the reflected ceiling plan, so that it's also grayed out. So we go to the 3D view. We've got our glazing now. We've got our door panel. So let's go ahead and set up some material parameters. So I could select the door panel, and across from materials, I have by category. I'm going to click on this little associate family parameters, add a parameter, and call this parameter instance panel. And I'll go ahead and add another parameter while I'm at it and create an instance for glazing. And set this one to the panel material. So notice this is grayed out now. I'll select the glazing and set that to the, the glazing material. So both of those categories are grayed out. If I want to actually put in a default material in here so that it changes color, we go up to the family types, and we should have under materials, glazing, and panel, and we have by category as a default. I'm going to pick glass for the glazing, and I'll hit apply, and we can see through it now, and I will pick wood for the panel, and turn on use render appearance so that that wood will then end up showing up in our shading, and hit apply. The trim also should be allowed to be its own color, so let's go ahead and add a material for that too. And so we're going to add another, and call it trim instance. And when we go into here, we can now change the trim by category. Let's just pick a different wood color for the trim. Walnut we'll pick here, and use trim just to make it different, and we'll hit OK. So that shows all of our materials, and we want to pick the trim on the inside as well and set that to the same material category. If you wanted to make that so you could use different colors for inside and outside, because this is an interior exterior wall, a door rather, you might want to make a separate material, call one interior trim and another one exterior trim. Okay, for the next step we're going to go ahead and well, let's save this, and in the next video I'll show you how to nest the grill in here. Let me hit save first. Now that I've got that saved, and then now we'll take a look at the next video.